Hello, and welcome to the Quiet Part podcast, hosted by Mark Hansen, where he explores the unspoken stories hidden in the quiet hours we spend at home. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great, Wendy. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It's always good to see you. And we have a guest today, and I'm very excited to say that this is part one of a multi-part series that we're going to be diving into. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, I would say the most common topic I get from clients, prospective clients, just people in my peer group even, is about houses, homes, purchasing, buying, selling. Like, what should you be looking for? Like all these questions keep popping up. And I thought we would dive into a multi-part series on this instead of one giant episode. And the multi-part series today, we're going to talk about what should you be looking for in your house, as in maybe the layout of the home. And later on, we'll get into like mortgages and financing and dollars and affordability and more about along those lines. Those will be later on the road. Today, we're just going to be talking about what does a home kind of look like. And to bring in the guest, I wanted to have this discussion with someone that I really trust. This is Mike Welch. He's a realtor. He loves helping families find a home. He's living right in the thick of it with us too, growing his family as we record this episode. Mike, welcome to the Quiet Part, man. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I appreciate everything. Wendy, it's great to be here for sure.
Yeah. If you've ever wondered, this is back towards the audience, if you've ever wondered how the layout of your home can make or break your daily life, or if what does the backyard have to do with the home office? That's some of the expertise that Mike's going to be bringing with us today as we discuss the key things to think about of what can turn a house into the perfect home for you and your family. And today we're talking about the family home, and more specifically, again, the structure or the layout of the home and how that intertwines with our daily life. And we're talking about it because this is where you live. It's your kingdom, your domain, where you lay your head, where you raise your children, and it is probably the most expensive thing you are ever going to purchase. But there are risks associated with this because it is the biggest purchase of our lives. Is what if you walked into the most expensive purchase of your life unprepared? And what if you bought because you were simply exhausted of the search and you settled on something? And what if you bought with confidence only to realize you only knew half the story when you made your decision? So let's dive in and let's see what Mike thinks. And Mike, I just wanted to start off with a quick story, right? So my wife and I, we spent a long time looking for our house. And when I say looking for the house, I mean we spent 1 year in time driving around looking for what neighborhood we wanted to purchase our home in. We kind of knew what size we wanted it to be, but we would, on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we would spend all day just driving around looking for neighborhoods that we wanted to be in. Do you have any thoughts around what helps somebody know what's a good neighborhood for them? You know, my dad used to say, like, drive to a neighborhood right around sundown and just roll the windows down and just listen to what happens. And you kind of hear like the buzz of a neighborhood. But what do you think as a realtor working in the market today?
Sure, yeah, and it really all depends on the client itself, right? What their needs are, what their wants are. Do they need a good school district? Do they need close to their work? It just depends on them, really.
Okay. And how does somebody put that into, maybe they need good schools. A lot of the people listening to this podcast are going to have either children or have plans to have children, and they are going to be looking at the school system. How does somebody do that? Is there a fast way to look at what's the reputation of the schools for a certain neighborhood?
A fast way? No. An efficient way? Yes, sure. You can go to niche.com. You can go to greatschools.com. You can ask your realtor to help you with, the general knowledge of that realtor of what schools are good and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay. I didn't think about that. So how we can lean on the realtor to actually help us make these decisions, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The
Okay.
market knowledge and the overall location knowledge, it's very beneficial to have for sure.
Okay. And do you think, this is just kind of spitballing here, if a realtor struggles to answer that kind of a question, would somebody be sitting back and thinking maybe this isn't the right realtor to work with, or is that more of specialized knowledge? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I really don't think that the realtor needs to know every type of school district within the DFW area. There's a wealth of knowledge on the internet that can help you out with that, with different websites and stuff like that. But they do need to show some confidence in certain areas for sure.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple of websites earlier. I think greatschools.com. Is that what you said?
Great schools. There's another one called, I think it's called niche.com.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very, very beneficial to help with school districts.
Okay, these are websites that people could go to learn some more and kind of educate themselves. Maybe pare down where they're looking by saying, "Oh, I don't want to go look in this area because of the existing school district."
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
and they're very beneficial, free to use. They'll tell you things like Prosper ISD is rated, I think, seventh in the state of Texas. Frisco
Hmm.
is like number 5. Allen is number 13. So there's definitely a lot of great benefit for that.
Yeah, and these are good things to keep in mind with again a lot of the clients and people listening to this podcast. You're going to have young families. Now, when I'm thinking of young families, and when we were looking for what neighborhood we wanted to move into, part of that neighborhood experience was like how I used to live in a neighborhood where it was essentially a shortcut between two freeways, and it was so much traffic up and down. So I knew to be looking for something like that. I didn't want to live in that kind of environment again because I remember it from my childhood. Another thing when we were looking for this home was we knew that we were going to have children, so we wanted to have a lot of park access. That's what drew us to the area that we're in. But what other things should young families be thinking about? Just trying to find the location and then we'll dive into the actual home.
Sure. Young families, it depends on how close they want to be to work. Depends on how close they want to be to schools. If they are wanting to start a family, I would absolutely be close to an elementary school or a middle school or whatever it may be, to just to have an easy commute. You don't want to drive 10 minutes to school. That's for sure.
That's a good reminder about commutes. Definitely, when we were looking, we opened up Google Maps and we started drawing some circles around places we wanted to frequent. We are trying to find where do these circles overlap. Let's try to be in those areas. That's definitely a good way to think about it. Now, once we find where we want to live, we need to find maybe the actual home. And the story that I get to share, I think because we did so much homework, maybe we just got lucky. I don't know. My wife and I only looked at 3 houses, and we bought the third house we looked at. And I think part of that is because we got to tell our realtor, no, we don't want to look at a lot of things. As in, we knew what we were looking for, size, layout. We wanted kind of that great room aspect where, and I think that, please correct me if this is not the right terminology, is that where the kitchen pretty much touches the living room and the dining room as one giant space. Is that called a great room?
Yeah, you can call it a great room.
Okay.
Open concept.
There we go.
Yeah,
Yes.
for
So
sure.
we
Yeah.
wanted open concept, and our realtor would send us some houses, or we'd look at the listings and we'd say, well, no, not this one, not this one. We didn't want a whole bunch of walls in our house. And maybe you can help by telling a story or something. But our story was walking in, we got to the end of the entrance hallway, and my wife and I looked at each other and we said, this is the house. This is the one that we want to buy. And then from that point, we were able to, purchase the home. We live in this home. What is that? What am I describing? Because as a non-expert, I don't even know what I'm talking about, and it sounds absolutely crazy. But we knew within like 30 feet that this is the house we were going to buy. What is that?
Yeah. We call it the feeling. I can see it on people's faces whenever they find the house. And I can see it on people's faces whenever they're like, we need to get out of this house as soon as we possibly can. So for real,
Is that one? That's called the escape, right?
that's called the escape for sure. Yeah, it won't hurt my feelings when somebody says, "Hey, I don't like this house. It's not my house," so that's totally fine. Um, but yeah, it's the feeling. Whenever the client starts to envision their furniture somewhere, I'm like, okay, this is a serious contender, right?
Mm.
Or they say, my curtains would really go well in this room. Who thinks about curtains whenever they're looking at a house? It's a serious buyer is what they do, right? So to tell a story, before I was a real estate agent, I bought my first house. Right, I was 24, I believe. Um, Me and my wife, I love her dearly. We have different ideas on houses. I want something clean and sleek and beautiful. She likes old and has a bunch of character. I like the character, but she likes old, right?
I appreciate you calling it character. That's a good name for it. Character.
Character. I call it repairs. However, we walked into this house, and there were holes in the ceilings. There was holes in the floorboards. There's holes in the walls. It was flea infested. The house honestly should have been torn down. And we walked through it, and the whole time I was shaking my head, just, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And she looked at me and she said, "This is the one." And I said, "Is this what you did whenever you decided to marry me?" Like, like, goodness gracious, how do you pick? So we ended up buying the house, happy wife, happy life. Over the years, we fixed it up, and to this day, that's the best house I've ever lived in. I mean, it was by far the best decision that we've made in a long time. I didn't have the feeling, she did.
Have you guys watched It's a Wonderful Life? Because that's exactly what you just described. I mean, you know the movie, right?
I do. I'm not trying to compare it to A Wonderful
The
Life, but
house. He hated the house. He fixed it up every day. It took years. But I wanted to just comment that we had been looking for a long time as well. And we saw many houses. And finally, when we walked into the one we purchased, even my realtor was like, "It's very cute."
right, right, yeah.
Yeah. And Mike, I want to go back to something you said a couple minutes ago. But you said it as a throwaway line, but I want to make sure that people hear that, right? If somebody doesn't like a house that their realtor is showing them, you said, "I don't care. It's not my house." And that's people need to have that level of communication with their realtor. And I know, again, we looked at 3 houses, but when we got to the first 2, we just stood in the entryway and said, "No, this is not the right one."
Mm-hmm.
Like one of them, it felt like, I don't know how to describe it. It felt like, like a shotgun home that like runs straight back. They're very
Oh
popular
yeah.
in like New Orleans and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't a shotgun home. It just looked like a tiny line that ran straight back. And we were like, this is not open concept at all. Too many walls. We want to be opening some stuff up. Now, you and I have had a discussion previously around what makes sense to think about changing in the house, right? So if you walk into a home and you think, oh, well, we'll just knock down the left-hand wall and we'll build out and add 2 more bedrooms, that's kind of crazy. We probably aren't going to be doing that in most neighborhoods. But what is appropriate to think about? Okay, I see this and I can change it. And changing it is an appropriate thing to do. What falls into maybe appropriate upgrades, or when we say it, what is it that realtors say? They're like, look at the bones or something like
Yeah,
that. What
it has good bones.
There we go. I knew houses had bones. I just couldn't remember anything about the bones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When it comes down to it, if the person likes the location and the price is right, but maybe there's a wall or two, or maybe you can add a bedroom somewhere or a bathroom, and it makes sense financially, then absolutely do it. Pull the trigger on that house. Right. If the numbers don't make sense, then there's no reason to do it. Let's go find another house in a better location. Maybe it has a better floor plan, and let's go after that one.
So that's a step 2, step 3. Step 1 is let's make sure that the numbers pencil before we start reimagining what the kitchen is going to look like or something
Yeah.
like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And any realtor worth their weight would be able to kind of give you an estimate of how much those repairs or renovations would cost.
Okay.
I've got some really good contractors in my Rolodex that do great work. They're reasonably priced. And so it's a phone call away, like, "Hey, how much would it be to take this wall out?" And I'm like, "Man, that's $4,000. Right. But the more expensive part would be, what flooring are you going to put in that place? What kind of materials are you going to put? Are you going to put marble in for your, or granite or whatever it is? What kind of materials are going to be there is going to determine what kind of costs are going to be associated. It's not necessarily the repair that's going to cost a lot or the remodel. It's the renovations that you put in.
Gotcha. And when you're thinking about giving a client advice like that, is it in reference to the cost of the home? A $200,000 home, and you want to sink. I say sink. I don't mean to say sink. You want to put $50,000 of investment upgrades into it versus doing the same exact upgrades in a $500,000 home, or is it more along the lines of, hey, you're only going to be here for 7 to 8 years versus this is your forever home? How do you walk people through that?
That is an awesome question. And I've seen it time over time in the past 10 plus years that I've done this. So you don't want to price yourself out of the neighborhood, right? So if you buy a $200,000 home and you put $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 into it, you're probably not going to get a $270,000 home after it's all said and done. Okay.
Hmm.
Because what you have to do if you want to go and sell the house after you do all these remodels is you have to do a comparison, right? Comparable market analysis is what it's called. And just because you put $70,000 in the house in the market comparable, maybe the highest home that's been sold, maybe it's a little bit bigger, maybe it has the same renovation sold at 250. Well, then what's the justification of us getting another $20,000, right?
Hmm.
So it's really it's a hard game to play, and you have to do it smart. So that's why you need to one ask a realtor. If hey, I'm thinking about doing some renovations, call your realtor up and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I can say, hey, if we do that much, let me run some comparables on those numbers, and I can tell you, hey, this is a good idea, or maybe you need to scale it down a little bit, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. I think everyone watches a little HGTV on Saturday night, and they get really excited about just covering the entire house in shiplap and just making everything. What is like a navy and like an emerald green are the popular colors right
Oh
now. It's
yeah.
just, do you ever
Well,
have to tell somebody like, "Hey, let's tone it down. We don't need to paint everything emerald green or whatever the popular color is of that time."
what I always say is whenever you finish an episode of HGTV, there's always credits at the end and it says script writers on there. It's all scripted. There's no
Mm.
script writers in this real life scenario of you overspending on your renovation and then you're stuck with a bill that you can't sell, right? So be careful when it comes to it. HGTV is great. I love to watch it. All the homes in Florida and wherever else, Connecticut, beautiful homes. Not real life. Be careful.
Yeah. What about if you make something that just isn't because like I love Florida homes also, especially specifically I love the lanai is what they call it, like the big outdoor living room essentially. So a
Oh yeah.
lanai,
Uh-huh.
it's like you'd have like couches and a kitchen and fans. It's almost like a second house outside, right?
Yeah.
Because Florida is a place where
Gorgeous.
you do want to be outside. But what if you build something that's not, or if you upgrade to something that's not suitable for your region? I understand upgrading outside of your neighborhood and kind of you can't cover that cost, you can't get it back. But what about if people just have like funky stuff for the region that they're living in? Is that, hey, this is your house, it's your most expensive thing, it's your kingdom, do it, or is it, hey, people might not like red ceilings, we shouldn't do that? Like, what do you think about that?
Sure. At the end of the day, that's where you hang your head, right? That's where you're going to bed. That's where you live. That's where you spend probably 60% of your life, right? So be happy in your house. If you want to paint your ceiling red, go ahead and do it. I don't recommend it, but go ahead and do it. If you want to spend $70,000 and your realtor's saying, hey, we probably can't get all the money out of it, you want to go ahead and do it, go ahead and do it. It's at the end of the day, be happy in your house. That is the most important advice I can give you as a realtor. Um, don't settle for a house that you don't really want to buy. Don't
Yes.
settle for the renovation that you don't really want to do. If you want to do more, do it. I just can't
Right.
promise that we're going to get everything out of that renovation.
Well, but okay, let's say somebody puts $70,000 into an outdoor kitchen or something like that, and they're only going to get 50 back out of it. Well, then your goal, quite your quote unquote goal, have $20,000 worth of fun, right? Like use it and get $20,000 of enjoyment out of it or more, and then you sell it and you still have raised your property value. But I think the main thing that I don't like seeing people do is pouring money into their already most expensive asset and then not utilizing those areas, right? Like don't build the outdoor patio if you're not going to sit on it. Don't
Oh,
don't
without
add
a
on
doubt.
another bedroom if you're not going to do anything with it. But then there's also the piece that the last piece I wanted to talk about. Mike, this is and it's an expensive purchase. It is an expensive transaction. There's a lot of fees associated with moving a home into your name. How do people think about the future? How do you plan for the future, right? Like three bedrooms holds three people, or if you go to certain countries, three bedrooms can hold, 7, 8, 9, 12 people. It's kind of a Western American thing that everybody needs their own bedroom. But how do you think about planning the space in your home and buying a home that lasts you into the future?
Great question again, Mark. Yeah, so those are the initial conversation that I usually have with a client, right, is, hey, what are you looking for? Right. Well, I'm looking for a 4-bed, 3-bath house with, 2,800 square feet in a large backyard. Okay, great. Why? Right. The why, the motivation behind what you want is the most important key a realtor could know. Right. Well, I'm moving there. I need that because I am looking to grow my family, and I have one child right now, and we're pregnant. Right? Okay, that's a great reason to have a 4-bedroom house, right? But if you're saying, hey, I need a 4-bedroom house, it's just me and my dog, right? Why do you need a 4-bedroom house that's 2,800 square feet if it's just you and a dog? That's a lot of places to dust, right? Or sweep up hair. Like,
Yes.
just like, maybe that's not what you need. And so getting down, it may be what you want, and we can go find it if that's what you really truly want. Let's go find it. But I see so many times clients say, hey, I need this, and actually it's just a want. That's all it is.
Man, that's such a good line. And that's my wife and I. We look at our house. So we got a 3-bedroom house. We have 3 kids. We both work from home, and sometimes we think, man, it would be great to have 10 more square feet run around in, have those spread out a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
But then every time we clean the house, we think, if this house was any bigger, it would be a real bear to clean. So we're striking that balance of, how much space do we really need? And we've been working through a lot of that, of how long can this house last us? How big can our children get before they need their own space? We're working through all that. And again, we're working through it because it's not something we want to rush into. It's not something that we want to make in the heat of the moment, in the wow, this house feels so small kind of a situation. But Mike, let's finish up with a couple real knowledge. That's not the. I'm going to start over. So, Mike, let's finish up with some of those golden nuggets that I promised at the beginning. Now, you said what I believe might be one of the smartest things I've ever heard, because it was so far outside of my brain space. It completely caught me off guard. I've been telling everybody about it since you mentioned it. What does the backyard have to do with the home office?
So this was kind of an outside of the box thinking whenever COVID hit, right? So many people got marooned from their office, right? They couldn't go to the office, and so they had to work from home. Big shame, right? Gosh, I got to wake up and go to the living room and work, right? So that was the problem, though. They were sticking in their house all day long, and it became monotonous and just like, where do I go? Like, I go to my office, which is my living room, and then I go to my kitchen and grab something to eat, and then I go to my office, which is my living room, and then it's like, man, where do I go to enjoy myself? So what we found is that a lot of people would say, I want to explore, but I can't. And I'm like, well, why don't we go find a house that has a nice backyard, maybe a kitchenette back there, or a resort style pool, to where you feel like you're not stuck inside your house anymore. And that made a lot of people's brains start ticking. Like, okay, I don't necessarily need a home office. A living room could be a home office. A dining room could be a home office. My bedroom could be a home office. But that backyard, I can't get contractors in here right now because everything's, nobody's wanting to work. Nobody can work. So I'm going to go ahead and buy a house that has a big, nice backyard with a pool, and forget the home office. I can work from the kitchen, right? I can work from my backyard, which is a resort style pool now. So, that was a big, we saw a big swing in people not renovating their kitchens anymore. They weren't renovating the bathrooms. They were renovating their backyards, because that was the big ticket. People wanted to escape their mundane house,
Yeah.
and they wanted to go to the backyard.
Yeah, there's something about, I used to drive 45 minutes to work and 45 minutes home. And then you start working from home, and all you get to do is close a door and walk from maybe the carpet onto a tiled surface, and that's supposed to be your transition time. But you're still under the same roof. Mike, when you shared that backyard oasis with me, I thought that is something I would have never thought about. That's the expertise that Mike can bring to the podcast, and I really wanted to get you on here. I wanted to kind of wrap us up and say that really a lot of what you talked about there at the end was kind of push and pull with what are you working with inside your home, as in, hey, I will give up the home office to add in the outdoor oasis, or I will give up the kitchen renovation to pour more money somewhere else. And that sounds a lot like episode 4 that we did around household cash flow, with pulling money out of certain expenses to put it into other ones. I would definitely say, hey, jump back, listen to episode 4 if you have an interest in that. All of this ties together. You'll even hear Mike, and I did not ask him to say this. Mike even said wants versus needs. Why do you want that? Mike is talking about the exact same things. There's an emotional component to this, but there's also the financial component to it, right? If you're going to get a home, you're going to probably have to purchase it. There's this money that's going to be trading hands, but there's also the emotional side, and we need to take that into consideration. And Mike, I want to thank you for bringing it. That's dang it. All right, we're going to restart that part. Mike, I want to thank you for joining us today on the podcast. How do people reach out to you? Where can they go to learn more about you? Let's say they listen to this podcast and they think, wow, I want to talk to this Mike guy. Where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate that. People can reach me at my phone number. It's 409-466-3638. You can go to my website at mikewelchgroup.com. You can email me, mike@mikewelchgroup.com. I'm available pretty much all the time. I've got clients in California and New York, and they call me at like 1 o'clock in the morning and they want to know something. So hit me up. I'm here.
To all of my clients in California or New York, please do not call me at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't work Mike's hours, okay? We're on different schedules.
So, Mark, how do people get in touch with you if they have questions?
Yeah, my contact info is going to be in the show notes, but I find that a lot of people actually want to learn a little bit more before they start reaching out. So if you want to learn a little bit more, I'll say go to the website. So it's second-comma.com. If you want to read through there, I try to put everything out there. I don't want you to have any surprises if you do decide to reach out to me. You can even get my ebook. You can download that. It's called What the Hack Are You Thinking? It's all about how you can't hack your way to financial freedom. You can't hack your way into retirement. It's a nice, slow obedience in the same direction. And then that's really what you're going to learn about in my ebook.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks to both of you. And thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time.